So for that, I am going to use, on this particular plane, which I'm really going all out on, I'm going to use some color changing lights that I've already soldered up a light kit for here. Looks like I forgot to put my heat shrink, or shrink my heat shrink on the ends there, so I'm going to have to take care of that. But here's a pre-built light kit that I've got. It's got WS2811, I think, are the 12 volt color changing LEDs. I've also soldered in some solid pieces. So I've got red and green tips, so that'll be all color changing. But then on the tips, you'll have red and green on all 3 strands per side. So I'll have one along leading edge, one in the middle, one along trailing edge. And also some, I think these are pink. Yeah, this would be pink afterburners for the back here to give you kind of some markers in the back there. It's pretty helpful for when the plane is flying away from you. So installing these lights, and by the way, I like to do it at this point because this is prior to extreme tape, which is going to help hold all those lights down. And this is prior to laminating, which is going to seal those lights up and protect them from all the dew and moisture that we run into, especially down here in the south, and especially flying at night when all that dew happens to fall. So I like to put them in before the extreme tape, before the laminate, to protect them. It makes them a little bit harder to repair, but it is still repairable. You just cut one slot, lift them up, pull them off, cut them, replace them, do what you got to do, and tape it back down with a nice big fat piece of packing tape or Scotch Extreme tape. Well, not Extreme tape, the Super Hold. You don't ever want extreme tape on the outside of your airplane not covered by laminate, because the laminate's got that UV protectant in it, and that extreme tape relatively quickly is going to dry out and yellow and get cracky and frail and look horrible. So that's why I put in the lights now. When I put in the lights, you know, these are kind of fat, kind of big LEDs, big transistors, or whatever these things are in here. So I am actually going to go through the painstaking time of using my hot knife to cut reliefs or slots that these lights can fit down in for every course of lights that I've got on here. So to get that going, I'm going to pull out the hot knife, and of course I've still got that adhesive everywhere that I've got to worry about. This can go away. So, hot knife. This is just one that I got from Amazon, foam cutter. It's actually been done really well for me, and wasn't very expensive. What I use is a little wheel collar here to help me set my depth on things. You've probably got a spare one of these laying around somewhere that'll fit on the needle. Just be sure that when you're adjusting it and moving it and tightening down your grub screws, that you don't go too deep and flatten this needle. It is hollow in the middle for whatever reason, and that'll ruin it. And that's why I'm using such a big needle today, because I have ruined my smaller needles. Now, I did give my spiel about cordless tools, so I guess I'll point out another option for foam cutters. Ryobi has a foam cutter. It's pretty cool. It's portable, but it takes a long time to get hot. And when it does get hot, even on the high temperature setting, it is not nearly hot enough to move quickly. It's a very slow cutting tool. So if you just need it to poke a hole or something, or you don't have anything else out in the field, be good to have. Just runs off of these little batteries here, Li-ion 4 volts. So that's probably why it's not getting as hot as I feel like I want it. But then again, it's portable. So, but since I got it, I rarely ever use it because it is so time consuming to use it. So setting my depth for my lights, I will use whatever straight edge I'm going to use, which in this case is going to be my 24 inch. And then I'll just grab some lights here. Put it on there. And then I'll gauge my depth by that. I want it just a hair deeper than where things are, and I think I've got that pretty much perfect right here. So no need to adjust it right now. Time to start cooking. However, I do believe that I need to mark my lines here. Getting that construction adhesive on me. Where's my nice, we'll just use this. All right. So my first course of lights, which is going to be on the longest lead of this kit that I'm going to do, is going to go right along the leading edge. All right. And I just want it just right in front of where my wing spar connects here. So that's a good spot. So I'm going to mark it where I want it. And these markings are just to give me an idea of how to measure and make my strands of lights nice and even. So once I've got the top marked, then I'm going to mark the bottom. The bottom's the one with the little afterburner hanging off. It's the second longest lead that's going to be on your kit. By the way, I do make these kits for people. So if you're interested in my kit, please go visit palmettorc.com and check out the light kits I got available on there for you. So this guy's going to go about here and here. It'll definitely save you a bunch of time not having to build a light kit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 2 marks on the wingtip. This one's at about 2 3/4, so that would be 1 3/8. So 1 3/8 is about the halfway point around there. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Now I'm working with 6 3/4. You know, it can't ever be something even. That's why sometimes, you know what? Let's just go metric on this one. 170. Wow. Divided by 2 is 85. So right there. All right. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other side while I'm measuring. Of course, I know I want this dot to be right next door to that dot. I know I want it in front of my wing spar. So that's going to be about my line. Same thing for the bottom. I just know it's going to be, well, oops. Let's pull out the line. I'm getting lazy. That's more like it. There. And there. Yeah, 70, 35. All right, metric, you win today. All right. Oh, that adhesive. Stuff works, bro, but good grief. All right. So we're going to get to cutting here. I'm going to lay down my straight edge, and I'm not going to be lazy. I'm going to pin it in place. This time. All right, that'll be good enough. And then we're going to get rid of all these lights out of our way. Here comes the voltage. Just trying to get a good angle of this for you. Here we go. All right. Oh my goodness. All right, I need to stand up. And my cord pulled my straight edge right off the track there. But that's okay, I caught it before it got gnarly. All right, when I get close to the wing spar, it may slow down a little bit. Yep, there we go. Just hitting that CA, just be patient. Oof, yeah. Enjoy the fumes. I'm just kidding, do this in a well-ventilated area. Yeah, just gonna hit that area one more time. There we go. Now, unfortunately, that tip is not wide enough, so I've got to cut one more. So I'm just going to move it forward just a hair, basically so I can just double the width of what I've done so far. And do it again. I'm using the flat side of this. You can see how it's like narrow on one side, flat on the other. Flat side to get a nice wide cut. And this should be just wide enough to let those light diodes sink down in here. And this step is 100% optional. Obviously, it's going to add a lot of time to this build because not only do I have to cut this course twice, but I now have to repeat it for 5 more slots, so 10 more cuts basically. But what it will do is allow your lights to lay as flush as possible to the bottom of the plane for better laminar airflow. I feel like it helps a little bit. I've never taken a radar gun to test it out, but at the end of the day, the lights will add nice and flat. But again, optional. You can just stuff your lights in there and push them down into the foam, and it will also work. And when it comes to illumination, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. So I am not going to bore you with the rest of my cuts, but I'm going to be doing the same thing for each one of these lines twice until I've got them all cut up, and then I'll get back with you. All right, so I've gotten all my channels cut for my lights in here on both sides. I think that probably took me an extra 40-45 minutes from where we left off last time. Maybe not quite that long. And so now I'm almost ready to start tacking down my lights. But what I need to do to prepare for that step is go ahead and take a piece of extreme tape. I'm going to be using little 1 centimeter cuts off of this to tack down my lights, just to get them in place before I put down my main application of extreme tape, or bidirectional filament packing tape, as it's sometimes called. So if you've got a cutting mat, this makes this nice and easy, because I just laid out a 30 centimeter strip, and every centimeter I just made a cut. So I've got a bunch of strips there. And then if I just get my pointy tweezers, then it'll be real easy for me to just peel those up and tack down my lights when I need to over here. So the only other thing I need to do to prepare for my lights is I want a hole cut here so that I can pass my wires through and get them to the top of the plane. This slot is also going to be the slot for my battery strap, which is going to go all the way under the plane and over top of the plane to make a big loop there for protection, support, crash resistance, that kind of thing. So I need to know where I'm going to put that. And I happen to know that your electronic slot is 4.5 inches back. So I'm going to flip the plane over. And using my square, oh, that's where my wing spar is, which is fine. That's actually good to know for the top of the wing too, because I'm going to put a piece of extreme tape down over top of the wing spar. And 4.5 is where my radio slot's going to be. So I'm going to mark that. And I'm not going to cut the whole radio slot right now. I'm just going to cut enough so I can stick my leads for my lights down in there. So once again, I'm going to fall back on my handy dandy black line that I drew at the beginning of this process. And I'm just going to go 1 inch to either side. I might start using a little pin for this if it marks well. Yep. So 1 inch to that side. One inch to this side. Yeah. So that's how long my cavity is going to be. As for the width, I'm going to cut it to the width of my receiver. For this installation and for most of my wing builds, this is a receiver I use, Spektrum, I fly Spektrum, AR630. So this is a great receiver. One, for wings, it doesn't have any antennas to worry about, so that simplifies the installation. Two, you know, it does have the gyros on it, so it's got your AS3X, AS3X Plus, if I just update it real quick, which I will do, as well as Safe Select, and now you also have that hand launch assist. So all these things are really great for making this flying wing fly just amazingly well with effortless hand launches. So the only reason I would stray away from this receiver, because it's got plenty of channels for lights and a couple receivers and power and all that kind of stuff, is what I will say about it is if you're going to be flying at an event like Flight Test Flight Fast, where you've got 3 combats a day and every time you've got over 100 pilots up in the air, you would want to get something with some ports for at least 1 remote receiver, if not 2. Because a lot of people out there are going to be flying Spektrum, and what I have found is that that's the only time where I either completely black out and crash, or when I get home and look at my flight log on my radio, I've got so many fades and holds that it's just absolutely scary. So other than a scenario where you're flying with 100 other people on Spektrum at one time, this receiver should work great. So back to my radio slot here, I'm going to cut it as wide as the fat part of this receiver and as deep as the receiver, plus whatever you're going to use to adhere the receiver to the plane with. In this case, I've used some 3M Dual Lock, which is super strong stuff. I could probably pick the whole plane up by this. Or, you know, if you've just got Velcro, use Velcro. But I go ahead and install it on the receiver so that I can set my needle. Again, don't forget the flat edge that you use or straight edge that you use. And then set your needle depth here. I give it a little bit deeper than the bottom of the tape there, because I am going to put a layer of epoxy down, some 5-minute epoxy down, to get the bottom section of this Dual Lock really adhered into the bottom of that plane, because the regular adhesive on here isn't going to be enough to just stick to the EPP. Not a lot of stuff does. So that's where I'm at. I've got my depth set. I'm going to set my width. About there. And then I can start cutting. Just going to double check and make sure that this is square. You know, before I do, it's the old measure twice, cut once. Right, and I like it. I like it. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to do a little pre-cut to get my line in, and then I'll go all the way down. And that gives me a little bit of a stop. It's not much resistance, but it gives me a little bit of resistance when I get to my exact endpoint that I set with that pre-cut. Bam, I just feel a little bit of resistance there and I can stop. So, yep, not cutting all the way through the wing. That's good. And we're just going to, well, I'll cut this one now. You'll notice a little more resistance when you hit that hot glue in the middle, or whatever adhesive you used. If you use that construction adhesive for to glue your two wing halves together, you're probably actually going to have to stop and get a razor and cut through it, because your hot knife won't even burn through it. And your razor is going to have a heck of a time too, honestly. And this isn't going to be my final hole. It is just going to be, or not the size. Obviously my radio channel is going to be bigger than this. It's got to put everything in it. This is just to get me going and to make a spot where I can stuff my wires before I laminate. So I did an extra cut down the middle there to give myself two thin pieces of foam that I can then just take my pliers and just pull them out nice, and they don't rip. I want them to be thin enough to where they don't remove anything deeper than where I wanted it to be. So I've still got a little bit left in there. So I'm going to take my straight edge, and this is a cool little trick. I just go back and forth kind of like a printer. In fact, sometimes I call this my printer method. And that will give me a nice, perfectly flat bottom down here that I can be proud of. There we go. All right, so we've got our cavity in there. I am going to modify it a little bit because my actual battery strap, I like to use these Luminaire Kevlar battery straps. I believe this one is a 20 millimeter by 250 millimeter, which should be just about right for this one. The 300 millimeters sometimes are also work really well for these if this one's not long enough. But I'm going to cut a little bit of a relief here so that my battery strap can sit down in there well. Of course, this piece will actually be up here. It'll be this piece back here. But you get the idea. So I want to get an idea how wide that is. There we go. There. So now I'm just going to cut a little relief for my battery strap. And I'm just going to cut to those marks that I made. I'm not going to remove the marks. Well, except for that one. All right, now we've got a little spot for our battery strap to go in and get out of the way of all our wires. And really the only thing left to do, I need to get all the way through the plane. So what I like to do at this point is take like a razor, and that's going to go through the wing and give me a hole. And that's going to go through the wing and give me a hole. And then when I flip her over, I can't see my holes. So I'm going to stick my razor back in one of them. Oh, there you are. Okay. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Now we have a nice, neat battery slot cut through there, battery strap slot, and all our wires are going to go into that too. You know, if I'm using solid 12-volt LEDs, this is a little bit easier process. I've just got the two wires coming out, one for left, right, and then all the power is just looped together off everything else. But now we are ready to tape our lights back down. So let me grab one of my kits here, half of it. And you're going to want to make sure if you've got red and green tips on your lights, these are going to be all red and these are going to be green. But you know what? I'm going to test it just to make sure. So I will grab you and say you. No. Yeah, I can use 3S. All right. So I've got a light controller here that I've rigged up. I removed the heat shrink off of it and then reduced the size of the JST connector for the power in and crimped a new one on there just so I've got less bulk. And then I created a two-way Y harness with normal servo wires with your male or female pins depending on how you look at it. So that I've immediately got a Y that I can work with for a left and right to cut down on bulk and everything in there. These will plug right into here. And then all I need is some 12-volt power going to it. Do not plug a 4S into this. You'll fry your lights. And everything is working. Afterburners are on. And these are, in fact, my reds. So, all right, now that I know what color I'm working with, and I've made sure that everything is working before I go tape it all down, this is my last chance for an easy fix if I have messed something up. It's good. Oh, except for the heat shrink I forgot to do, which is, I guess, a good time for back to my Ryobi tools. Again, I love cordless stuff. This is a cordless heat gun. Works great. Of all the cordless things I have, this one definitely is the harshest on batteries. But it is so nice. Doesn't get quite as hot as my plug-in model. As quickly, I should say. It gets as hot, just not as hot as quickly. But the added convenience of being able to do that in the field or just not have a cord and one more cord when I've got all these things going on. It's really nice. You don't have to use the here. That was a nice touch. Okay. All right, and I said these were red, so they're actually going to go on this half of the wing here, so that when it's coming at us, red is on the right. Red on the right when returning. And I shall start off by pushing this through the right hand side of my hole here as I'm looking at it. My longest lead is going to go to the front, my second longest lead is going to go to the back, and my shortest lead will be right here by my slot. Little dry fit. I want to make sure I can get it down here towards the wingtip. That is perfect right there. Nice and tight there. So, bam. Time to grab some tweezers. And I'm going to pull the strip off the back, protecting the adhesive for the LEDs. And go ahead and grab a little centimeter piece of extreme tape. And we're just going to make sure it's seated where we want it, that it's nice and straight. And we are just going to be tacking this in place for now before we do our primary, or I guess our major extreme tape installation. So I use about 4 of these per strip. If the strip crosses the wing spar, that's definitely a spot where I'm going to use a piece of tape. Bam, got our middle in. It doesn't really matter which one we do next. So, kind of like this to be. Yep, there we go. And I've already lost my tweezers. Nope, there they are. Oh, that's not good. You don't want to see white when you pull this adhesive up. I mean, you do, just not on the bottom of the blue strip. Huh. There we go. And it's good to have a little bit of slack in your lead for this top course, because we're going to have to work around that battery strap actually coming through the front of here as well, and we don't want to cut through our wires. Again, if I've got a spot by the spar, I'm going to make sure I tape there. If you've got a little tab hanging off the end, that's all right. You can fold that over later. I maybe could have pushed this up a little this way. I'll put one more on here. Go. And you'll see some of this extreme tape, and this is by the way, the generic stuff, the Bumby Pack or whatever this is called. The name brand stuff's like $30 a roll. This stuff's not cheap either, but it's not $30 a roll. I'm hoping the reason Scotch charges $30 a roll is because the adhesive's a little bit better than the adhesive on here. Although I think they're honestly probably pretty similar, but you'll see later on I'm going to use some spray adhesive to make sure that my extreme tape goes on really well as my decals and stuff like that. It just seems to help some. But if you used other tapes, they probably wouldn't stick at all. Such as your decorative packing tape, right? Or your decals and stuff. Like, that stuff's not gonna stick at all. It's straight to the EPP, which is why most people put it on after they laminate. But if you can work around that and find a way to adhere it, you can put it on before you laminate and protect it. It will make repairs a little bit more difficult than if you installed lights or decals afterwards, after laminating. But when it's more protected, I kind of feel like you have a less chance of having to do repairs, which leaves more time for fun. And that's really what these EPP composite build combat wings are all about. Is flying more and fixing less. Don't forget our afterburner. You know what, I might grab my motor mount real quick, like, put that on there just to make sure I'm not getting behind that or where it's going to go. That looks great. Very nice. All right, that's one side. Rinse and repeat. You'll see those backlights actually stuck to the EPP really well. That's because we had all that construction adhesive back there, and I actually laid down a little bit of extra when I had the camera off and took a popsicle stick and gave me just a skim coat basically and fill that gap in there with some more of that construction adhesive, and this stuff is like just totally sticking to it really well now, so I'm not even going to tack that down any further. But what I will probably tack down is these lights here, just so they're not pushing up on here and giving me bubbles and troubles later. Bubbles and troubles. Ooh, yeah. There we go. So when I'm laying my front wires down, I want to give myself a nice wide gap that I can pull my battery strap through the front of it, which is going to be somewhere in this general area up here. All right, just enough. Okay.